Hey there, Pop-Tarts. When I was planning the materials and the subjects that I wanted to hit on for Self-Love September, I found out, or I kind of remembered, I refreshed my memory on this, that the 23rd of September is Bi Visibility Day. And as a bisexual woman, I thought it would be really cool to kind of use this as an opportunity to talk about my experience with my sexuality and kind of coming to terms with that and accepting it. Because I think during Self-Love September, not only me, but lots of other people as well start to think seriously about the trials that they've had in terms of accepting the things about them that have been difficult to accept or difficult for other people to accept. And I definitely think that my sexuality, although it was a lot smoother sailing as an experience than a lot of other people who find that they're not heteronormative in nature, definitely had its ups and downs for me. So today I'm going to be talking a little bit about my own journey. And I want to start by saying that for me personally, realising that I was bisexual and having relationships with both men and women would have been a damn sight easier for me if other people hadn't have been involved. If I hadn't have had to tell other people or rely upon other people to understand, accept and tolerate, I think I myself on my own would have been fine. Like, I never had any worries, I never had any insecurity about wanting to be with women and have sexual experiences with women and have relationships with women. That never ever bothered me. I was really celebratory about that. It was really other people and the fact that I had to interact with other people and I had to rely upon other people to be cool with it to an extent that caused a lot of the trouble and that really like threw a fucking spanner in the works. So that's kind of the angle I'm going to be coming at it from. And I'm also going to spend a little bit of time in this video talking about gender identity as well, and the adventure that I kind of went on when I was younger in relation to that too. So I'm hoping this is going to help people. And I know that in the past, when I've mentioned the fact that I'm bisexual and that I've had relationships with women, it definitely has helped people because people have let me know that in the comments or in emails to me. So I definitely think it's worth speaking out about these kinds of things. If you do know that people follow your content, if you have an audience of any kind, I definitely think it's really important to speak out about these things because it's amazing how many people you help by doing so. And that's something that I never could have predicted when I started the YouTube channel. I never could have predicted that it would help people for me to talk about my mental health history or about the challenges I've been through with my sexuality. But it turns out that those kinds of things are really useful for other people who either find themselves stranded in a state of secrecy or feel as though they're alone or feel as though they're being rejected. It kind of helps them to be able to resonate with somebody whose videos they watch and whose personality they kind of vibe with. So I'm doing it just as much for people who kind of are finding that they are outside of what's heteronormative. They are something other than heterosexual, and maybe they're struggling with it, or maybe they don't know how to tell people or how to talk about it. I hope this video can give you some clarity around my own journey and maybe help you with yours a little bit. I realised that I was bisexual when I was 14. I was attracted to women a long time before that, but it was at the age of 14 that I realised that this was something that I was going to have to accept and be conscious of and actually speak to people about, because I realised that, you know, I was falling for women and women were falling for me. So I kind of realised when I was 14 that I had to come out and say something. And the first person I told was my stepmom, and that went really well. Actually, she took that moment to kind of tell me that she also was bi and had had relationships with women, so it went more than well, so that was good. And then the time came when I was 15 years old when I had to tell my mum, because I got into my first relationship with a woman. And yeah, that was a little bit more difficult. That was a bit tougher because my mum was raised in a very close-minded environment, and her mother raised her, you know, in a kind of in a homophobic kind of way. My mum wasn't allowed to hug her sisters or sleep in the same bed with her sisters or show affection towards her sisters. You know, her mother would ridicule them for being like lesbian or acting homo or whatever. So my mum definitely was raised with that kind of attitude in the household. And my mum, although she was completely aware that that wasn't appropriate and that wasn't how she wanted to be, and my mum did have gay friends, she definitely had those kind of residual feelings inside of her of it being wrong and it being unnatural and abnormal and all the rest of it. So it was difficult for her to hear that I was bisexual, and she was visibly relieved to know that I felt that I was bisexual and not fully lesbian. So that was something that she was, she kind of breathed a sigh of relief over, but it was definitely tough. My mum went through her times of being very tolerant and very understanding and very cool with it, and then her times where she was not cool with it at all, and she really went on the attack about it and felt really yucky about it. So it was difficult always to navigate and gauge my mum's feelings. Sometimes she tried to be okay with it and sometimes she wasn't, but very quickly after I came out to my mother, I got into a relationship with a girl that I was completely besotted with, and that lasted for just over 3 years. So that carried on until I was 18. Due to my mum's confusion and my mum's kind of emotional back and forth about me as a teenage girl that was in a relationship with another teenage girl, she definitely caused quite a bit of confusion for me. For example, after my girlfriend and I had been together for about 18 months and it was clear that it was getting quite serious between us, my mum was kind of asking me, you know, why don't you come out as a lesbian? You don't seem to have any interest in boys. It's clear that you've never really had any interest in boys that I can possibly see. And it's evident that things are very serious with your girlfriend. I don't really understand why bisexual was what you chose to come out as. I mean, surely you're a lesbian. So it was strange. It was like my mum went from being very, very relieved that I wasn't gay to then almost trying to push me in the direction of coming out. So my mum definitely projected a lot of her confusions and a lot of her kind of biases and kind of difficulties with understanding onto me and onto my relationship with Jodie. So she definitely went through a period of asking me, why don't you just come out as gay? And I would say to her, because I am also attracted to men. It was difficult to explain to her the way bisexuality feels and the way that you just know that you are attracted to both males and females. So, you know, at that age as well, when you're just kind of realising yourself what's going on and you're also really, really attracted to and in love with the person that you're with, it's really difficult to sit your mother down and try and kind of explain to her that you kind of know what you're doing and you understand how you're feeling. And it's really funny because, of course, straight teenagers never ever get asked these kinds of questions. You know, straight teenagers never really get asked to clarify if they're sure that their sexual orientation is their sexual orientation, nor do they get drawn into these long, you know, kind of complicated conversations about it with their parents. So it was frustrating at the same time, and I kind of tried to deal with it. And like I said, my mum was sometimes really, really fine with the fact that I had a girlfriend, and other times she was really not fine with it, and so it was very difficult to gauge her response. Sometimes she would be very passive-aggressive and very kind of hostile, even with my girlfriend just being in the room. Even if I brought my girlfriend home for a cup of tea after school or whatever, my mum would be really funny with us. And then at other times she was really accepting and really, you know, came at it with open arms. So that was always something that I had to navigate my way through. I did experience homophobia from my peers at school, from some of my peers at school. I also experienced a strange kind of fetishization from some of the girls in my year. I remember at one point I was in a history class when I was 16 years of age, and these girls in front of me were turning around and saying, "Kelly, are you attracted to me? Are you attracted to her? Are you attracted to her? Who are you attracted to?" And it was almost like I was some kind of circus sideshow or something like that. That was very frustrating. That was kind of like the happier end of the spectrum when it came to homophobia and people's curiosity and people's kind of othering of me. There were definitely also some not so great times of things being shouted at me, being threatened with things. You know, there were things that weren't as pleasant and weren't as comfortable by a long way. I remember I went to my first gay pride event with my girlfriend as a teenager, and that was really eye-opening. It was really cool. It was a great sense of belonging and, you know, a great sense of openness and freedom. But there was definitely also there was an unpleasant kind of situation where there were kind of people from the far right and, you know, people that were like against gay marriage and against freedom of expression for gay people, and we got kind of caught up in that, and there were things of that nature, you know, definitely, and things just being shouted at us sometimes. I've definitely experienced my fair share of homophobia. Within the wider context of my family, obviously because I was with my first girlfriend for quite a long time, for like almost 3.5 years, it's quite a while, so obviously she met my family and I met her family. So within my wider family circle there was acceptance with conditions. So there were certain older family members, sometimes of the Catholic variety, who preferred to refer to Jodie as my friend or my special friend, you know, but I was fine with that, you know, it was okay. And there was actually a great deal more acceptance than I think a lot of people would assume there would be in an Irish Catholic family. My girlfriend's father, however, was really unhappy with the whole thing, and, you know, definitely had a serious fucking bee in his bonnet about his daughter's lesbianism, so that was unpleasant to navigate. A lot of people that are bisexual that kind of operate within the LGBTQ plus community will tell you that they have experienced biphobia, and that biphobia is actually quite rife within kind of the gay community particularly. Biphobia among the LGBTQ plus community that we hung out with was really difficult for us. By the way, you know, I'm 31 now, so back in the day it was just LGB. I was actually the rep for the LGB union at my college, so, and then I can't remember when the T became common parlance, but it wasn't when I first came out. So a lot of things have changed, a lot of things about the landscape and the territory of LGBTQ plus, what it means, what it includes, what the issues are in comparison to what they were then. You know, a lot of things have changed, and I just keep rolling with it and keeping up with it and going with the flow. But yeah, anyway, experiencing biphobia within the confines of the LGBTQ plus community sucked. It really, really sucked. I always tried to be open and honest about the fact that I was bisexual and not gay. I never came out as a lesbian because I knew that that wasn't quite right somehow. I knew that I felt far more strongly attracted in a sexual sense to women, and I knew that I could definitely visualise myself settling down with this girl that I'd fallen in love with, for sure. Of course, as you do at that age, you know what I mean? It's very rare that you are going to end up with the person that you first fall in love with. But she really was my first love, and I just adored her, and I never imagined in a million years that I would feel any need to leave her for a man. And actually I didn't leave her for a man in the end. That's actually not what happened. But I was always very honest about the fact that I was bi, and I never felt it should be a problem, but I really experienced biphobia from the gay community. I experienced lesbians in our friendship circle and in the circle that we kind of went clubbing with or went to kind of gay pride with, taking my girlfriend off to one side on certain nights out and saying, you know, you really need to be careful of Kelly. You need to be really careful of bisexual women. You shouldn't trust them. Certain people really tried to put a spanner in the works between me and Jodie because of the fact that I was bi, and only because of the fact that I was bi. It was very clear that we adored each other, but it was definitely something that people riled against. I was distrusted because of it. I was also gently mocked and jibed because of it. It was something that people really wouldn't let up on me about. And actually I remember, you know, way after my relationship with Jodie ended, I would get into kind of things with women, maybe just kind of seeing them, going on a few dates or whatever, or just meeting them on a night out and getting into kind of a tryst with them. And I remember on a few occasions them saying to me, "Oh, you're bi, shit, didn't know that." You know, like it was an awkward moment to find out that I was bi rather than gay. It was like they were saying something about it, like, "Ooh, okay, bi." It was, you know, it was like that. It was just, and it used to make me feel so upset, you know, to feel distrusted just for being honest about that fact really sucked. Of course, you experience biphobia in the straight community too. When you are bisexual and you get into a heteronormative relationship, sometimes when you say I'm bisexual, the same thing will occur. You know, you will find that that person backs off from you, or you will find that that person's friends or family will ward them away from you. So that's something that I've always dealt with, unfortunately. Now that I've mentioned biphobia and what a horrible just tub of shit that is, and how often I've dealt with it, let me also mention the other side of that crap coin, bi erasure, which also sucks so hard, and something that I've dealt with a lot. So after I broke up from my first serious girlfriend, I dated a couple of women during my time in art college, and then right at the very end of my time in art college, I actually finally got with my first man. And that was when I first experienced bi erasure. That was when I experienced my mum basically strongly insinuating that my bisexuality had been a phase, and basically just trying to imply that everything had straightened itself out now, you know, that it was just something that I was playing at. And that was incredibly hurtful, and anything like that is really hurtful. Some of my friends made jokes about me being a has-been, or about me just going through my little teenage lesbian phase. And it just hurt so much because my time that I spent with the women that I've been with, particularly my serious girlfriend that I was with for 3 years, it was like that was being mocked. It was like it was being diminished. It was like it was being devalued. And it was also as though this part of my identity that I'd fought for was being shoved aside. It was like it was being mocked. It was being belittled. It was being erased. And actually, as I'm talking about it now, it's really affecting me to talk about it. I didn't think it was going to affect me like this, but really it is. It's very emotive to talk about this. Bi erasure is not cool. It's not cool. It makes you feel as though your memories and your very, very valid feelings and the things that you've been through and the things that you fought for are just not important, that they shouldn't be important to you, and that they're no longer important to others because your desire to be in a heteronormative relationship because of who this person is and what they mean to you has kind of scrubbed out everything about your past. And even though people think it's funny and people think it's light-hearted, I can tell you right now it's fucking not. Bi erasure it really can get under your skin, and it can create all kinds of little complexes inside of you that definitely I have dealt with firsthand, and I can say from experience that they're very real. I've also experienced bi erasure through having comments kind of thrown at me like, well, aren't all women bisexual? You know, I really think all women are bisexual. Which isn't the case at all. I just don't know where people are getting that from. You know, there are certain women out there who maybe under the influence of alcohol would like to sit on a female friend's lap and give them a kiss, and that's totally fine, but that's a completely different thing to being bisexual. And there are women who are comfortable to be experimental in the way that they talk, if not also the way that they act sexually, and they may have same-sex experiences. Again, this isn't the same as being bisexual. And to reply to somebody's statement that they're bisexual with the comment aren't all women bisexual is just it's just really odd. I just don't know why anybody would come at me with that, and that's definitely happened a few times in the comments section on YouTube, which has been you know, I just ignore it, to be honest with you. Whatever. When I tell a person that I'm bisexual and I feel that it's being trivialized by them basically insinuating to me that what that means is that I get drunk and I kiss my female friends, it diminishes the feelings that I have, you know. And it's not like I get a real bee in my bonnet about it. I just ignore it because I feel like it's just a shame that even in this very late stage of the game, some people still do not really understand what bisexuality is and what it means, you know. In my heteronormative relationships, in my relationships with men, I have definitely had my bisexuality fetishized. Not so much by the men that I have been with, because they're not that type, but by their friends or their co-workers or my co-workers or people that we are talking to and it comes up that I'm bisexual. I have been asked on numerous occasions if I have threesomes with my boyfriend and with other women. My boyfriends have been asked on numerous occasions, you know, are you going to get her to have a threesome with you and another woman? It's very, very much about being objectified as like the token bisexual girlfriend with whom you can do all kinds of kinky shit, and that's really very much the first thing that's in a lot of people's minds. So there's definitely that fetishization as well. I think in some circles it is really very much assumed that my bisexuality is some kind of a kink which I bring into my heteronormative relationships, which are the only relationships that I have or have ever had. And actually I've found that some people are very surprised to learn that I've had serious relationships with women in the past, and that I've dated more women actually than I have men. That's actually really surprising for straight men in quite a lot of cases when I talk about it, because they seem to have this impression, a lot of them that I've spoken to seem to have this presiding impression that my bisexuality is somehow for them, that if I was to get into a relationship with them, then it would be something that they could play with and they could entertain as kind of like this extra bonus of being with me. And it doesn't really occur to them that when I say I'm bisexual, I'm fucking serious. I've dated women, I've fallen in love with women. It doesn't seem to occur to them at all. It seems to be like something that they can have as an added bonus, and something that I bring into my straight relationships as something of a kind of something of a picadillo for them, and it's not something that I'm really serious about. So that's been interesting as well, and that's a further form of kind of bi erasure, and also just kind of othering me, fetishizing my experience and not seeing my experience as a part of my identity, but actually just as something which is pleasurable and interesting for them. Of course, I'm by no means including including all straight men under this umbrella. Like, I'm with a straight man now and I'm loving it. It's like, it's fine. I've met very, very many open-minded straight men, and I'm not in any way categorising them all as being under that umbrella, but I've had a lot of really interesting conversations like that with straight men, which have made me realise that my bisexuality is not being taken seriously, and that's definitely a form of bi-erasure as well. I want to clarify within the context of this video that I also do define myself as pansexual. But you know, I'm 31 now, and I came out as bi when I was 14 first of all, and then in a wider sense when I was 15. So for me, you know, pansexual was not a word that was in any kind of even remotely common parlance at the time. You know, it was not part of the lexicon. There were a lot of things that we are talking about now and discussing now as part of the LGBTQ plus experience that were just not anywhere near on the fucking radar when I was that age, okay? So I'm kind of long in the tooth. So bisexual is the word that I've always used, and I do know a lot of people that use the terms bisexual and pansexual interchangeably, because you actually can be both. Being bisexual does not mean that you avidly refrain from dating anybody who considers themselves outside of the gender binary or who presents as outside of the gender binary. Actually, I am incredibly interested, and always have been, in people who fuck with gender, and I certainly have done in the past. People who are who don't present as something that you could immediately define as masculine or feminine. I'm really attracted to anything like that. I've always been really attracted to androgyny. I've always been really attracted to gender bending, and I would consider myself to be a gender bender. I was for many years a hardcore gender bender. So I just want to mention that I do also consider myself to be pan, but like at the time, to be pan, I consider myself to be the Greek god of the wood. No, pansexual. And I'm really happy with both of those words. I'm comfortable with both of those words. I'm not going to get rid of the word bisexual anytime soon, but pansexual is really complimentary to that, and I have used that you know, just as often in the last couple of years to describe myself, because I think it describes me perfectly too. When I was younger, my mum had some real worries about my gender presentation, which I do not think she would have had if I was straight. But because I came out early as bi, and because I shaved my head and I loved to dress up in boys' clothes, I think, and I wore kind of like tank girl boots, and I had a very tough look. My mum had a couple of conversations with me when I was younger about my gender, about what I felt that I was gender-wise, and whether or not I'd ever thought about getting a sex change, which is what we called it back then. We didn't call it gender reassignment, we called it having a sex change, and my mum definitely wondered whether or not that was something that I wanted to do. I think that it's really interesting to me these days that this massive dialogue has opened up about gender, and that's not what this video is actually about. But I just want to say, as a kind of segue into that I think it's really awesome that we have all of these different words now, and we have this lexicon that has developed to help people to explain what is actually going on for them. Because for me, I didn't have that lexicon, and it was kind of difficult sometimes to have these conversations, not only with my mother, but with other people who wanted to engage with me in a conversation about gender and about where I stood on that spectrum and what exactly was kind of going on with me. But even from being quite young, I always wanted to play with gender. I always wanted to kind of experiment with it, and I was very interested in the way that my feelings changed and my sense of my identity changed when I put on different clothes, or when I adopted different mannerisms, when I lowered my voice, when I walked in a certain way. I felt different, you know. And I remember the very first time that I buzzed my head, I just gave myself a full-on grade 1 haircut. I remember then experiencing all of these different things through playing with a more typically masculine gender identity, and I definitely used to love, you know, dressing up in boys' clothes, and I still do, steal my boyfriend's clothes, and I definitely present more classically feminine now, but I have my fucking moments, you know, so I definitely have really enjoyed playing with both ends of the kind of binary spectrum, if you like, as I was growing up, and that definitely did lead me to have some conversations that were kind of confusing, and I had to get to grips with the fact that I always felt cis, and I always have felt cis. I've always felt like the gender I was assigned at birth, and I've never felt anything other than that. I've never felt as though, like, this language that's coming up now about being gender non-binary, being gender fluid and that kind of thing, I think that's great if that's what people require in order to define themselves and explain what they are going through and what their experience is. And like I said, I wish that lexicon had been available for me in a way, because I definitely felt at odds with myself when I was having these conversations, because people like my mum and others were trying to get me to put myself in a box, and I didn't have the language and the phraseology to explain that I didn't need to go in that box, because those boxes are bullshit. They're just a fugazi. They don't really mean anything. So obviously that lexicon would have been useful, but at the same time, you know, I feel like a woman. I feel like the gender I was assigned at birth, and I've never taken issue with that. And I've never ever felt, I never felt when I was a teenager that the fact that I shaved my head and wanted to walk around in boots and, you know, like, you know, army jackets and stuff like that, and wear no makeup, and the fact that I was misgendered constantly. There were like 3 years back there where I was constantly misgendered, and I was called Sir and Son and Sonny Jim and all the rest of it. Thank you, young man. That's what like old women used to say to me when I helped them with their shopping across the road and stuff. I was misgendered constantly, but I never ever felt that that should mean that I should identify as male. I just never felt like, I used to feel like, well, why can't I have all of this as a woman? Why can't I wear what I want and still be a woman? Why do I now have to question whether or not I'm a man? So for me, the language would have been useful, but I never felt anything other than a woman. But definitely it was difficult for me, because I was trying to constantly figure out, am I supposed to be defining myself by what you think I ought to be defined as? And I feel like had I have gone on the internet then and had all of the stuff available to me that we have now, it would have been much easier for me to go, oh, okay, it's okay for me to just be who I am. It's okay for me to be in this body and have these desires to express myself in these different ways in terms of presentation, and not have to put myself in somebody else's box. And it's okay for me to push back against any insistence that I define myself in a way that doesn't make sense to me. So you know, that was something I had to come to accept and love about myself too. I learned to love my bisexuality through actually witnessing how it helped other people in the gay community that I used to hang out in for definite, that were bi, that either came along and introduced themselves and were bi, or who had realised that they were bi after perhaps earlier coming out as gay. My insistence upon saying I'm bisexual and never coming out as a lesbian was definitely empowering to others, and I know that it was, because people would say to me, you really have empowered me to just accept my bisexuality and to not force myself down a road that doesn't really define me or represent me. So I think that gave me a lot of empowerment and self-love, was just seeing that if I could be that person to say, this is me, and I'm not going to be forced down a specific path because it would make it more comfortable for these people or easier for these people, it really, really empowered and inspired others. And that was one thing that helped me to love my bisexuality. And with my gender presentation and the way that I dressed, again, the same thing. I know that I empowered other people through not backing down and through just being who the fuck I wanted to be and dressing how I felt like dressing. I know that I inspired other people, particularly girls at my school, to do the same. And that was what helped me to really love myself and to really feel okay with it, was to know that just by being me, even though it took some boldness sometimes, even though it took some courage sometimes, even though I had to have a couple of awkward conversations every now and again about gender and about sexuality and about who I was and stuff, even through all of that, I know that I gave some people the keys to their own sense of freedom just through looking at me, you know? And I really feel like that is something that helped me to love myself and helped me to appreciate myself, was seeing that if I could just carry on being me and having the guts to do so, then I would be able to help other people to say, you know what, I want to dress like that, I want to do that, I want to hold my fucking girlfriend's hand in the street too. And I came from a very, very monocultural Middle England town. My father was living in the most incredible, most full-on, most multicultural happening part of London, and I would spend like the weekends with my dad. But my mum lived in, you know, Middle England, in the Shires, in a teeny tiny little monocultural, really kind of conservative, buttoned down, laced up town. So I was definitely the town freak, and I know that I gave permission to other girls to do the same. And even though it was frustrating because some of them copied the fuck out of me, and I've always had that, that's always been something that's plagued me, online, offline. You know, I've definitely got a single white female vibe, I know that. But now looking back at the age of 15 or 16, to see that girls were experimenting with their style or being more open about who they were or who they thought they were because they saw me as an example, that was great. That's great, and I'm glad I could do that for those people. I came out young and I was happy to be seen holding hands with my girlfriend. I was a very defiant human, and yes, I did experience homophobia, absolutely. And yes, there were times where my girlfriend and I knew that we might be placing ourselves in danger by showing each other public affection. So of course we were savvy about it. But you know, I would totally wait for her outside the school gates, and we would totally walk home together holding hands. I was very defiant about that, and I was proud. I was proud of the love that I had for her, and I was proud of who I was when I was with her. And I was the same with every subsequent girlfriend that I had. And I know that coming out so young in that age group where there was a lot of repression and a lot of uncertainty, again, definitely helped other people in my peer group, in my friendship group, and in the school in general to do the same and to be more comfortable with themselves. So that's one way in which I definitely learned to accept my identity more fully and to see the magic and the power in my identity and in my desires. Okay, that's all, folks. Until next time, thank you so much for listening to a little bit of my story. I hope it was helpful, and I hope it's given you a bit more of an insight into who I am and where I'm coming from. And until next time, much love and much self-love. Blessed be.